Top 5 must-have Linux Mint desklets that will transform your desktop. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're running Linux Mint, chances are you picked it for exactly the reasons most people do. It's stable, it's beginner-friendly, and it just works. But if you've spent any time staring at that default Cinnamon desktop, you've probably noticed one thing. It's pretty bare. And look, clean is good, but too clean? That's just wasted screen real estate. Today, I want to show you 5 desklets that I personally use on my Linux Mint setup. Ones that don't just make the desktop look better, but actually make it work better. So whether you're a productivity nerd, a Linux newcomer, or just someone who wants their desktop to do a little more, stick around. This one's for you. Now, what are desklets? Before we jump in, let me quickly explain what desklets actually are, especially for anyone who's new to Linux Mint. Desklets are essentially desktop widgets built specifically for the Cinnamon desktop environment, which is the flagship edition of Linux Mint. Think of them like the widgets you'd find on a phone home screen, except they live right on your desktop wallpaper and interact with your system directly. You can access them by going to System Settings, then clicking on Desklets. From there, you can browse available desklets, download new ones, add them to your desktop, and tweak all of their settings. One quick tip before we get started. Head into the General Settings tab and switch the decoration style to No Decoration. The default border and shadow around desklets looks a bit outdated, and removing it makes everything look far more polished and integrated with your wallpaper. Alright, now let's get into the 5 desklets I think every Linux Mint user should have. Number 1. Quick Links Launcher. First up, and honestly my absolute favorite, the Quick Links Launcher desklet. At first glance, it looks like a simple grid of icon buttons sitting on your desktop. And yes, you can use it that way, to launch apps, open folders, whatever. But what makes this desklet genuinely powerful is what happens when you dig into the settings. Each button can be configured to run a terminal comm. That means you're not limited to just opening apps. You can create a button that opens a specific website directly in your browser. You can have a button that launches a particular Google Doc or Notion page. You could even create a work mode button that automatically opens your browser, your note-taking app, and arranges them side by side, all with a single click. Essentially, each button can trigger a full bash script with as much logic as you want behind it. It turns your desktop into a personalized control panel. And if you want something simpler, that works too. You can organize multiple launchers by category, give each one its own theme and color scheme, adjust icon sizes, add tooltips, and control how many rows and columns are displayed. If I had to pick just one desklet to keep, it would be this one, every single time. Number 2. Calendar. Next up is something a lot of people overlook, the calendar desklet. Now I know what you're thinking. I can already see the date on my taskbar. Why do I need a full calendar? And honestly, that's a fair question. But here's the thing. Seeing April 20th in small text on a panel is very different from seeing a full month grid with today's date highlighted. When I glance at the month view, I immediately understand where I am in the week, how many days are left in the month, what's coming up. It gives me a mental sense of time that a simple date stamp just can't replicate. For me personally, it creates a quiet sense of urgency, which helps me stay on track instead of letting days blur together. The desklet itself keeps things simple. There's no calendar event syncing or anything like that. It's purely a visual reference. But it comes with 2 layout options, vertical and horizontal, and gives you solid customization over font style, size, color, and transparency. With a bit of tweaking, you can make it look like a natural part of your wallpaper rather than a widget slapped on top. Number 3. Todo. Alright, number 3. And this one has genuinely changed how productive I am day to day. The Todo Desklet. I know task management apps exist. I've tried plenty of them, but there's a fundamental problem with dedicated apps. They get minimized. They get pushed to another workspace. You close a window, and suddenly your to-do list is completely out of sight and out of mind. With the Todo Desklet, your task list is always visible. It floats on your desktop beneath every window, every workspace, every session. The moment you finish something and close your windows, there it is, staring back at you, reminding you that the day isn't over yet. That visibility matters more than it sounds. It's a gentle, constant nudge that keeps you accountable without being annoying. The Desklet itself is well built. You can add tasks, check them off, move completed items to the bottom with a strike-through, and mark high-priority tasks with a highlight so they stayed out. There's even a multi-column layout if you prefer a wider, horizontal arrangement. The default styling is a bit bland, but the settings let you change the background color, transparency, font, text color, and even the checkbox icons, so it's easy to make it match your overall desktop theme. Number 4. Notes. Number 4 is the Notes Desklet. Think of it as the companion to your to-do list. A task list is great for structured work, but some thoughts don't have a checkbox attached to them. A random idea, a phone number someone just told you, a half-formed thought you don't want to lose. That kind of thing needs somewhere quick and always accessible to lint. That's what the Notes Desklet is for. It's a sticky note that lives on your desktop, always visible, always ready. No opening an app, no creating a new file, no saving. You just type directly onto the desktop. What I really appreciate about how this Desklet is built is that your notes are actually saved as plain TXT files in your home folder. So even if you accidentally remove the Desklet, your content isn't gone. You can also run multiple Notes Desklets simultaneously for different categories. One for work, one for personal ideas, one for reference info, whatever works for you.
The theming options here are also surprisingly fun. The default look is a classic sticky note with a magnet pin, but you can switch to a spiral notebook design, a coffee-stained paper aesthetic, a wall paint look, and more. Font size, text style, and background color are all adjustable too.
Number 5. Digital Photo Frame. And the last one on the list? The Digital Photo Frame Desklet. Now, I'll be honest with you. When I first came across this one, I ignored it. A slideshow widget seemed decorative at best, gimmicky at worst. But then, I stumbled onto a use case that actually stuck with me. Instead of using it to display family photos, which is absolutely a valid use, I pointed it at a folder full of images with motivational quotes and ideas I find meaningful. The Desklet cycles through them automatically, and every time I sit down at my computer, I'm greeted with something that subtly sets the tone for the session. It sounds small, but I found it genuinely useful for keeping my mindset in the right place before I start working.
The Desklet itself is straightforward to set up. You point it at any folder, set how often it should cycle between images, adjust the display size, and optionally enable a smooth fade transition between slides. There's also a sepia and black and white filter option if you want a more vintage look that pairs nicely with certain desktop themes.
So there you have it. 5 desklets that I think every Linux Mint user should at least try. If you're just getting started and don't want to go all in at once, I'd say start with the Quick Links Launcher and the To-Do Desklet. Those two alone will noticeably change how you interact with your desktop on a daily basis. And remember, a large, empty desktop is a missed opportunity. You've got the screen space, so you might as well put it to work. If you found this video helpful, drop a like and consider subscribing. I cover Linux tips, productivity setups, and desktop customization regularly. Let me know in the comments which desklet is your favorite, or if there's one I didn't mention that you think deserves a spot on this list. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.